Hi there, I'm Miro Korenha with Our Daily Planet, and today we are thrilled to have the Lincoln Project co-founder, Rick Wilson, with us. And Rick, I know we're just in the last stretches of the election here, so thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Hey, I'm happy to be with you. Sorry I'm mobile right now, but that's the world I live in at the moment. No stopping, no resting.
Yeah, I love it. Rick, I wanted to ask, the Lincoln Project, your aim is to bring disaffected Republicans and independents into the fold. And I wanted to ask, do you think that there's an opportunity to perhaps relay the urgency of climate change to these voters? Like, could the environmental community ever bring these voters into the fold?
Well, I think in some states there are questions about both environmental matters and quality of life that will play a role in the 2020 election, both affirmatively for folks who believe in a cleaner environment and a healthier climate. And on the flip side, there may be some where it benefits Trump. I will say this, Florida is certainly a state, which is going to be one of the key battlegrounds in this election, where the questions about offshore drilling, the urgency of addressing climate matters with the sea level rise, et cetera, that's an area where that might be some part of the political dialogue. On the negative side, we have seen that, unfortunately, messages Trump likes to push out on carbon matters especially have had a positive political effect for him in places like Ohio and Pennsylvania. There are states where it's a bit of a trade-off. Arizona is another state where climate matters are helpful to Joe Biden in this campaign, especially with some of those suburban Republican voters. I will say, though, the reality of this year is unlike any campaign cycle we've ever seen. We have this gigantic externality of COVID, which has really reshaped the political battlefield in a lot of fundamental ways. And the economic uncertainty that has come because of COVID has also had a really major impact this year. In a normal year, we would be talking a lot more with those targeted voters that at the Lincoln Project we're looking for about climate, about quality, environmental quality. But this year, it's a very mixed bag.
And here's something I'd love your take on, is that we have a decent amount of data that shows us that all voters across the political spectrum care about the innate value of the environment. They want clean air, clean water. They even want protection for national parks and public lands. But we've seen in the past couple of years that while independents and Democrats have seen the urgency of climate change as a big threat, Republican voters haven't caught up. So I think a Pew poll from this year shows that only about 31% of Republican voters view climate change as a major threat for the United States. And why do you think that incongruity exists? If you care about clean air and clean water, why are you not caring about the climate crisis?
Well, I think a major factor in that is that the rise has led to an even deeper siloing. So you end up with Republicans who really get their information from a few channels on Fox and Facebook. And in those cases, they are basically saying over and over again, climate change is a lie, it's a hoax, it's a way to hurt Donald Trump. And so it's a much different feel than you would have in an otherwise traditional political environment. When we've seen economic downturns in the past, we have tended to see Republicans dip in their support for climate and environmental action in prior downturns like the 2009 and as far back as the 1991 recession. I will ascribe part of it to Trumpism and part of it to the economic knock-on effect that COVID has had that has caused some changing political views on those matters.
Yeah, definitely. And here's a question I'm most excited to ask you. You know, the Lincoln Project has really made tidal waves in this election by creating ads that really are blunt and get to the heart of what Donald Trump and his enablers have been doing to our democracy. So if the Lincoln Project were to craft an ad to convey the urgency of climate change to voters, what elements would you include?
What I would include first off is the questions of posterity for future generations. That really is a message that harks back all the way to Teddy Roosevelt. I would try to make that argument first because most Americans, they understand we have a fairly urgent necessity to start addressing climate matters in the immediate future. And I would talk about what it means to your kids, your grandkids, their grandkids, because these are decisions that are going to have consequential effects not for years, but for decades and even centuries, unless we take steps to re-engineer the economy. And, you know, I'm not saying that always means that the ad would say, oh, we've got to have a carbon cap or a carbon tax. Some of it might come down to American innovation and finding ways to do the things we want to do in a non-carbon economy. The minute my truck can be electric, I'm going to drive a truck that's electric. The minute I can put an electric motor in my airplane, that's what I'm going to do. But these things aren't there yet. So I think there's a combination of optimism and innovation and a question of posterity that would help drive these messages forward, probably more effectively in some cases, especially with swing suburban Republican voters, than a lot of the doom and gloom stuff. Americans are a fundamentally optimistic people that when we finally hunker down on a problem, we tend to take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched a bit about this before, but you're a Floridian and Florida's on the very front lines of climate change. You know, we just had a hurricane sweep through and hurricanes are getting worse, sea level rise, algal blooms, which are a huge threat to the coastal economy there. So what do you think of the ways in which Governor DeSantis and Senators Rubio and Scott are handling climate issues to protect Floridians?
What? Let me say this. The best thing they've all three done, I'm going to give them all three props on one question. They have opposed the White House's prior plan to begin offshore oil and gas drilling in the Gulf. Now, all three have been significantly opposed to that. And even the Trump administration backed away from it a few days ago because they realized it's a political and environmental disaster waiting to happen in the state. Climate has not been a top of mind issue for any of these folks. And it's certainly not a top of mind issue right now because it's really not where Trump is. And they have to be where Trump is politically going forward because it's not a party anymore. It's sort of a personality organization. And if he's not happy with them, they're all going to pay a price for opposing his offshore oil drilling, but they recognize how deadly it is as an issue in the state of Florida.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully we can change that all this November. And Rick, thank you so much for taking a couple moments to chat.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry, I'm in the car right now.
I love it. This is real life. This is a snapshot for our viewers.
That's our world right now.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Talk to you again soon.
Yep.
Bye-bye.